welcome back to Bumblebee, where the horrors are still haunting, the asylums are eerily empty, and the air smells of sin. Today's all things eerie topic is the top 10 ghost ships that disappeared without a trace. Starting with a literal ghost story, Love Run Aground. The ship's only crime was having a name too ironic for the story. It was the day before Valentine's Day, 1748, and the Lady LIFEBOAT was set to sail to Portugal as a celebration of the Captain Simon Reed's wedding, and also run a few errands to boot. The captain's first mate and bestie, John Rivers, was either in love with the bride or in love with the captain and gets all jealous, ragey, and is the sole member who has an issue with the whole thing. So, out of vengeance, he crashes the entire ship into the notorious Goodwin Sands, sinking it and killing all on board. At least that's the consensus. Whatever happened or how nobody survived the crash. It's said that at least 50,000 people have actually lost their lives on the sandbank that is dubbed a ship graveyard. Since that fateful night, the Lady LIFEBOAT could be seen every 50 years sailing around Kent. 1798, 1848, and 1948 all had numerous witness sightings. The captain of the Edenbridge reported that he nearly collided with a three-masted vessel off the Goodwin Sands, and the captain of a smaller fishing schooner reported the same, but no wreckage nor survivors are ever found when sent. 50 years later, local residents in Kent saw a ship with 3 masts headed on a collision course with the Goodwin Sands, but again, rescue ships found nothing. And next, while searching for a Swedish spy plane wreck, researchers stumble upon an accidental boat discovery. The ship was found in 2003, and the full-scale archaeological expedition to actually study it was launched in 2010. Throughout the investigation of the ghost ship, they've been able to establish that the ghost ship was from the 17th century AD, perhaps around 1650. It was a merchant ship, and the ship style was a flete, which was developed by the Dutch towards the end of the 16th century. Nevertheless, other questions remain, such as the identity of the ship, the flag under which it sailed, and the cause of its sinking. The ghost ship was just one of the many shipwrecks that have been preserved in the Baltic Sea. This sea covers an area about 400,000 square kilometers, and according to some estimates, contains as many as 100,000 shipwrecks, most of which are remarkably well preserved due to the lack of salinity in the water. No presence of shipworms, which would normally eat away at wrecks, and there's also no tidal movements. Mix those together and shake, you got some gift-wrapped shipwrecks waiting for you down there. Oh, and by the way, they did find the Swedish spy plane that vanished in 1952, so double mission success. This next ship washed up in India after being adrift for 9 years. Lost somewhere in the Pacific Ocean in 2009, Sam Radulangi PB 1600 was last seen off Taiwan's coast as it sailed away before contact with the ship is lost. As was it, until suddenly reappearing in the south of Myanmar in the Indian Ocean on August 30th of 2018. It was reported by some fishermen from a Myanmar's village nearby when the giant thing ran itself aground on a sandbar. The fishermen, not fearing death or the spookies, entered the ghost ship and found nothing aboard. When the coastal police and the Navy pulled up, everyone inspected the ship and had no clue where it came from, but suspected being towed by another ship after 2 cables were found at its head. Well, howdy doody, they got their answer as to how this jumbo ship made it all the way to Myanmar. While a literal tugboat, one called the Independence, found by police 50 miles off the coast, and after questioning the 13 Indonesian crew members on board, authorities learned the tugboat had been towing the vessel since the 13th of August and intended to take it to a factory in Bangladesh that would dismantle and salvage the ship. However, some of the cables attached broke during bad weather and they decided to abandon it. However, there has been no explanation as to how the ship that was last spotted in 2009 off Taiwan's coast ended up in the Chittagong shipwrecking factory arena. When asked where they found it, the fishermen simply said, adrift. In the 2000s, many unexpected boats and vessels have been found in Asian waters, a famous case being the 12 wooden boats. Over October, November, and December of 2015, at least 12 wooden boats were found adrift or run aground carrying everyone's favorite type of cargo, the decaying bodies of 22 some odd people. 2 of the people were found without heads, and 1 boat contained just 6 loose skulls. Since the first boat was found in October, a series seemed to flock after it like the setup of a Stephen King novel. The consensus for these ghost ships is that they were likely defecting from North Korea. 1 boat's hull was embossed with the Korean People's Army, and another had a tattered scrap which looked like it was part of the North Korean national flag. The boats are made of wood, and they're old and heavy, they can't travel very fast, and they have next to no protection from the elements, and the engines are not powerful enough to turn the ships against current. Combined with defectors being forced to take a more dangerous route across the East Sea, as now crossing the border into China is considerably harder, these boats showing up as a fleet of death didn't actually shock officials. Then, in 2017, again, 4 separate ships washed up on Japan's west coast, full of bodies again from North Korea. Turo Miyamoto, a professor and expert on North Korea, explained a reason other than defection for the number of ships washing up ashore, which has risen since 2013. It's after Kim Jong-un decided to expand the fishery industry as a way to to increase revenue for the military. They're using old boats manned by the military by people who have no knowledge of fishing, Miyamoto said. It will continue to happen. This next ship on our count is a UNESCO heritage find, because it's all coral reef. This wreck was originally reported in the late 1990s by a local fisherman and professional diver, Manuel Polanco, who had discovered the ship on the Banco Chinchorro Reef. The wreck was explored by divers from Mexico's National Archaeological Institute for the first time in 2010, after which it was named the Manuel Polanco in the finder's honor. The Banco Chinchorro is one of the largest coral atoll in the northern hemisphere, and this singular reef has wrecked so many ships it's now known to mariners as the Dream Catcher, Sleep Depriver, and Nightmare Reef. A total of 70 wrecks have been recovered here, and with so many lives having been lost at the location, the reef is now a UNESCO underwater heritage site. The divers who explored the Manuel discovered metallic artifacts including iron ingots, probably used for the ballast, an 8-foot cannon, and an anchor. Samples from the wreck's wooden hull dated back to around the 18th or early 19th century, and the researchers said it was the design of the ship's anchor, known as the Admiralty pattern, that suggested this is a British ship. Furthermore, evidence suggests the anchor was live when the ship ran aground, and this means the crew had dropped the anchor while the ship was in motion. Why? The archaeologists said the anchor was probably activated in a desperate attempt to halt the ship's progress onto the reef, but apparently too late. Well, if there's one thing we can say is that the lifeboat lived. The passenger steamer SS Valencia had a varied history of carrying passengers, cargo, and troops. After 20 years at sea, it was sold and launched as a second-class passenger steamer, running routes out of San Fran. It was in late January on one of these excursions in 1906 during a horrible storm, the Valencia struck a reef and the ship quickly started taking on water. To avoid sinking, the captain ordered it be beached since they weren't far, but they again hit the rocks and the ship starts getting tossed around. People are in a panic, so the lifeboats are launched against the captain's orders, and almost all were immediately failures as a result. 3 flipped on descent, 3 more capsized after reaching water, and the last one has disappeared under the waves. The ship was carrying 108 passengers and only 37 are eventually rescued. The ship itself became a subject of ghost stories from that day forward. In 1910, the Seattle Times reported sightings of a phantom ship that resembled the Valencia adrift in the sea. Other reports from fishermen around British Columbia told the story of a lifeboat manned entirely by skeletons. But stranger still, in 1933, the Valencia's No. 5 lifeboat is found empty in Barkley Sound. Even after years of exposure to harsh oceanic elements, the lifeboat is completely untouched and unharmed. Part of it is now on display at the Maritime Museum of British Columbia. We have to put a celebrity cameo, obviously, so here's the Mary Celeste. Canadian pride right there. If we do anything right, it's ghost ships. On December 4th of 1872, a ship now known as the Mary Celeste was found adrift in the Atlantic. The ship was in full sail and in seaworthy condition, but when it's boarded, it's found to be completely empty. Meanwhile, a month prior, on November 7th, the Mary Celeste left New York Harbor hauling 1,701 barrels of poisonous denatured alcohol as cargo and a crew of approximately 10 people. What happened in the 1 month before the British Del Gracia found the Mary Celeste sailing aimlessly between Azores and Portugal? Upon closer inspection, the last entry in the ship's daily log was written on November 24th. There was still water and supplies for 6 months and even smoking pipes laid out on the tables. Worse, the ship's single lifeboat as well as her chronometer and sextant are missing. The main halyard rope, 3 inches in circumference, is found broken and hanging over the side of the ship. From these bits of evidence, a possible scenario pieced by historians goes as follows. Something occurred on the Mary Celeste that made the captain panic, and he ordered the crew to get in the lifeboat and abandon the ship. The halyard was then used to tie to the lifeboat, and the captain and his crew trailed behind the Mary Celeste to see what would happen. The panic turned out to be false alarm, but unfortunately for Captain Briggs and his family and the crew, the halyard snapped during a raging storm and they were unable to get back on the Mary Celeste. This next ship is also pretty well known and may have fallen victim to potential pirates. Like a Flying Dutchman, the 5-masted schooner Carol A. Deering loomed through the mists about Diamond Shoals today, all sails set but unmanned. That quote was published on the heading of the Washington Herald, February 3rd of 1921. Unlike many on this list, the 10-man crew successfully made it to their destination of Rio de Janeiro in 1920 despite needing to change captains when the original one got sick. But it's on the way back in January of 1921 something strange happened. On January 29th, the Deering passed by the Cape Lookout lightship. Someone who apparently did not look or act like a crewman shouted across the water that they had lost both anchors. Otherwise, there's no sign of distress. Although the witness says the crew was milling about in a suspicious manner. The following day, the ship passed the SS Lake Elon southwest of the Diamond Shoals lightship at approximately 5:45 p.m. The Deering seemed to be steering at a really strange erratic course. The ship was still in good condition when it was spotted for the last time from Cape Hatteras on January 31st of 1921, before it was found shredded on the Diamond maritime in shoals. When the Coast Guard arrived to the scene of Carol's wreck, the sails were set, food had been prepared, and plates put out, but all untouched, and everything else seemed in order. The lifeboats were gone, and there was no sign of the men who had been on board. This next ghost ship made it to its desired location, carrying a frozen corpse crew with it. The famous Octavius was built during the mid-18th century and departed England to China in 1761. They left the port with the full crew of 28, the skipper and his wife and son. They arrived safely in China, unloaded their cargo before heading back to sea once she was loaded with new goods destined for Britain. Weather was warm, the captain was feeling confident, so he decided to sail home via the Northwest Passage, a voyage that had not been accomplished in 1762. This is the last that anyone heard of the vessel, her crew, or cargo. Fast forward to October 11th of 1775, and a whaling ship called the Herald discovers the Octavius stuck off the coast mounted on ice. They boarded the tattered ship and looked for booty, dead or alive. Breaking into the ship's hatch so they could descend below deck, the Herald's crew meets a terrifying set. The entire 28-man crew was frozen to death in their quarters. In the captain's cabin, they found the captain still seated at his desk with the ship's logbook in front of him. The Herald's crew, as superstitious sailors, had curse alarm bells going off and got out of there. They grabbed the ship's log on the way and they lose the middle pages of the logbook. So when they're back on the Herald, they just have the first and the last few, which are enough to piece together the basics. The captain of the Octavius had tried to navigate the Northwest Passage, but his ship had become imprisoned in the ice of the Arctic and the entire crew perished. The ship's last recorded position was 75N 160W, which placed Octavius 250 miles north of Barrow, Alaska. As Octavius had been found off the coast of Greenland by the Herald crew, that means it must have broken loose from the ice at some stage and completed its voyage through the passage carrying a frozen crew. The abandoned ship, though, was never seen again. And now, a horror movie classic is the I Die. In 1940s, the story of a strange ship called the SS Orang Medan began circling in the newspapers around the world. The ship reportedly blown near Indonesia, and its entire crew had died under mysterious circumstances beforehand. It goes that in June of 1947, an officer aboard the British vessel the Silver Star picked up a mysterious, unsettling distress signal from the Medan. Through crackles, a man said, "We float. All officers, including captain, dead lying in chart room and bridge. Possibly whole crew dead." Silence crackled along the line, and then, to tack on one more horrific little detail, one sentence breaks through. I die. The message was picked up by several other ships in the area. Silver Star was the first ship to make it to the source. The Dutch freighter is found floating adrift in the Straits of Malacca, and the Star's officer and crew boarded only to find bodies strewn around the deck. Their faces are frozen, teeth bared, with their upturned faces to the sun, staring as if in fear. Even the ship's dog is found this way, but there's no sign of injury or attack. Before any further investigation can be done, even preparation to tow the vessel, the crew of the Silver Star smoked smoke and quickly abandoned ship. As they boarded their own vessel and cut ties to the Orang and sailed away, within seconds the other ship exploded, leaving only empty water and debris. To this day, no one knows what happened aboard the Orang Medan in the seconds before the Silver Star crew arrived. As far as anyone knows, the ship itself slew the captain, passengers, and crew. Alright, thank you so much for tuning in. I hope you enjoyed. Be sure to like and subscribe to see more content from us, and until next time, tell me about some ghost ships in the comments.